Welcome everyone to the AIB 20-minute training. We are grateful to have you here with us today about this really important topic of being ready for live and hybrid events. And so much has changed in the past couple of months. We are grateful that a lot of restrictions are being lifted. There's so many opportunities and things that people can now do that they couldn't just a few months ago. And so today, our guest is Brian Chisolm from ConferenceDirect. I'm going to read his bio really quickly, and then we're going to hop right into our topic. So Brian Chisolm has 25 years of hospitality experience, including executive level positions. He joined ConferenceDirect following his career with the Marriott International. His current responsibilities include account acquisition, RFP development, site selection, and contract negotiation. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because he is a master at contract negotiation. And his clients include associations, religious, corporate, nonprofits, and education organizations. Brian has a degree from GW University and Trinity College. And I had the pleasure of being introduced to Brian I think maybe 5 years ago, working with one of my clients, and they mentioned that they had someone that could assist us, support us in finding a location for our event. It was for a client that had approximately 700 attendees. And I honestly, Brian wasn't quite sure. I was like, okay, who is this and what are we doing? And ever since our first interaction, he has been an amazing pleasure to work with and has taught me a ton about negotiation and all the things that are possible when working with venues. And so I am adding to the spotlight and bringing Mr. Brian Chisolm to join us in this important conversation today. Hey, Brian.
Hello, Aisha. Good afternoon. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm excited that we now have more possibilities with in-person and hybrid events. I'm not going to lie, I'm ready. I think a lot of people are ready, but we want to make sure that we are really ready because we think we
Really
are,
ready.
but things are different. And so we're going to have a conversation today. 20 minutes goes by really fast, and I know you have a wealth of information. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. We're going to get some questions from the chat in a little bit, but just can you share with us? I know when we talked on Facebook the other day, we were talking about the fact that I may do about 10 in-person events a year prior to the pandemic. And now I still have a number of clients that are scared or nervous about doing in person, maybe a little bit more apt to doing hybrid. And although we know that connection is so important, it still is a little bit scary for people. And so you have had the fortune in person of working with hundreds of events a year, and so have a different perspective. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to take some time and share with us some of the things that we should be looking out for, things that are important with this new age of hybrid and in-person events.
So again, thank you, Aisha, for having me participate with this 20-minute training session. I will say on the jump that I'm really excited that you gave me the opportunity to speak and kind of share my information with some of your family and friends and clients and colleagues and people around the country that you work with and partner with over the years. By way of a mini introduction, again, I've been with ConferenceDirect for over 15 years. And to your point, I spend most of my time on the contract negotiation side, the RFP, the site selection, sort of the front load work that folks deal with when trying to make decisions about where to host their meeting. What is the right price? What is the right package? And all of those types of things. And over the past 15 and a half years, I was going through some account information the other day. I think we've probably booked over 1,100 meetings or something like that. So it's been a lot. It's been a long time. And I love this industry. I love the many different aspects of the industry. I love the many cities, the markets. I like the localization of meetings and things that happen on the ground level. And I started today with this airplane ride, right? I'm like looking at the airplane ride, going to an airport for the first time back in May after this pandemic had knocked down all of my meetings pretty much for last year. We still have a couple of smaller meetings that we managed to work through over the course of the pandemic, but I was amazed when I went back to the airport and found a parking lot. Like two of the parking lots I used to park in were totally empty,
Yeah.
and you could walk right through the airport. But man, I just remember like so many people, just flying above the clouds and being out there and going to either Chicago or Cincinnati or Dallas or just many different cities around the country, Atlanta, and just preparing for meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, what I'm thinking about is how do we get back? What's happening? How do we get everyone back to meetings and what's happening in this world today? So again, I'm excited. I don't know if I answered your first question, but I just want to start with a little bit of a backdrop about who I am and what I've been doing over the last few years.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I think one of the questions that I ask myself and get asked a lot is just what are the things that we need to be thinking about when returning to in person or venturing into hybrid events, knowing that there are not necessarily restrictions anymore when it comes to distance. In a lot of states, they don't have the same, 6 feet away. But we want to make sure that people that are attending are safe and are comfortable. And so just I'd say, what are some of those like top three things that come to mind that we want to be aware of or take into consideration when planning?
You got it. 10 seconds of a commercial. Over the pandemic, I worked with a company called Meeting Shields. And
Mhm.
Meeting Shields and ConferenceDirect has been a really good partnership to think about what are all of the safety precautions. Meeting Shields is a protective management company. And what we have done over the last years, we've thought about what will it take to get people back to meetings, right? We looked at, face shields, speaker shields. We looked at all of the acrylics that folks are putting out there, the sneeze guards, right? And so what does a meeting look like these days? And we thought about all of the many different aspects of getting back to, you know, just getting
Us.
face-to-face meetings,
Yeah.
right? That's really what it's about. And I think the three things that people need to think about as meeting planners is one, the liability that meeting planners have. They, being realistic, right? If you're having a meeting for just your family or friends, or you're having a meeting on behalf of an association, is it a volunteer meeting? Are people forced to come to the meeting because you work for a company?
Mm.
Just think about the liability aspect of meetings, um, and making sure that you're protecting your organization with all of the right things. And right now, you're thinking about duty of care. You're thinking about apps that are out there that for tracking purposes. You're thinking about, and so it depends on, right, like your position and your decision making process. Like, how do I best serve my organization? How do I make sure I'm asking the right questions up front to make sure that our company or our situation is protected? But at the same time, you want to think about that the world has come nearing, I'm not going to say the end of a pandemic, right? But the world is getting to a point where now, if we're thinking about in today's terms, we have a lot of information. There's a lot, we talk about the CDC and the WHO and all those types of things. So we have years worth of information that tells us what's happening. Follow the science, right?
Mhm.
Listen to the science. I believe in the science, right? And the science right now is telling us we can take some mitigated risks. We can take and do some meetings, but we have to just make sure that we allow people to understand what their environments are. Washing hands, wearing a mask, staying your distance, thinking about the flu season and all of the things that we've always talked about. Like, how do we just prepare ourselves so that when folks are coming in the room and we're responsible for them, that we provide the tools and resources that they need. And right now, we're asking people to just call us, right? Just have meetings, think about your meetings, um, and make smart decisions and call and find the resources and tools needed to be successful in your situation. So did I answer your question? Did I give you three things? I gave you liability, I gave you following the science,
Mm-hmm.
right? I believe in those two things,
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe in preparing for your meetings now. And what that means is looking at all aspects of meetings and thinking about what are the things that you need to do. So knowing where your tools and resources are. If you don't know where all your tools and resources are, find a partner or somebody that can help you figure that out. And I think, again, there are certifications and things that have happened over the last year. Many people have gone through these processes, and there are really a lot of smart people. The point is, again, you do not have to go it alone and make the decisions on your own. It can be a team effort. So I think the third thing would be just to partner up and use your tools and resources wisely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the things that you touched upon that I want to kind of dig a little deeper with, and I know you said following the science and paying attention to those things that are being shared because things are changing. And for us, like every day, there are new things that are coming out about what to do and how to do it. And so in working with venues, specifically if you're working with hotels or venues to hold conferences. I know Shrim is considering whether or not their annual event in October should be hybrid or all in person or in Zoom. Are there certain things that you want to look out for in contracts or talk to venues about? And even when you mention timing, do you need to plan out a little bit further than you may have in the past just to make sure that you have those things in place? What are your thoughts
Yeah,
on
I would say the planners that I work with that I consider really, really good are the ones that continuously are reading and paying attention on what's happening today. So, in other words, there's a meeting that may take place in September, there's a meeting that might take place in December, or there's a meeting that might take place next June. The point is, you can't plan for a meeting the same way at different times of the year.
that?
If something is coming up in September, today's information is relevant. Today's information is relevant. If you're dealing with something that's coming up in December, today's information is good parameter of what you can expect to be happening going into your meetings, but you have to wait and be patient to see what's happening in that market at the time, where your constituents are coming from. Is it a local event? Is it a 6,000 person meeting versus a 600 person meeting versus a 60-person meeting? So I think that the reason I talk the way I do is because I understand that there's a lot of different variables that come into play. And there's no cookie cutter format to all meetings. And if you look for a cookie cutter format for your meeting, and you have to find like meetings, right? And you have to look at the time frame in which they're planning. And so I may look at a 600 person meeting for September a little different than I might a 50-person meeting in November. Again, so my point is, again, we have to think about all aspects of the meeting, and we have to think about, again, go back to liability, go back to science, and like if you can have a large ballroom with 80 people in it, then that's probably okay. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a large ballroom with 800 people, then you have to look at that differently. And again, I'm sorry, but my experience has just given me the flexibility in mind, not to look at everything the same way, but
Mm-hmm.
to sit. And I think you asked a good question too. Is when you talk about hotels and convention centers, right? They're your partner. You have to think about the convention center and the facility is not a person that naturally is fully liable to everything that happens to your meeting. You are the event operator, you are the event owner. You are partnering with a venue, and you're partnering with that venue in a way that the venue then shares some responsibility, but you are the owner. You make the final decision. And if you go to that facility venue with a plan in place, that venue will also work with you from your perspective. So again, I
Mm.
think my point there is you can't look at the venue as the person who's going to tell you what you're going to do with your meeting. You have to go to the venue with the mindset of, here's the unique qualities and qualifications of my meeting, and here's how we want to execute it. And you can get that from, again, talking to resources, looking at the tools and resources that you have available to you, and looking for best practices in that way.
I tell you, that is why you are the master negotiator, because just that frame of mind of looking at them as your partner. So it's not necessarily a situation where you are just renting a space from them, but like you said, being able to go into it with that mind frame of we're working together on this. This is my event, so I want to make sure that my needs are served, but at the same time, we're working on this together to achieve uh, a goal. And so I know that there have, I'm sure, been quite a few situations, um, especially for me and my clients, where we hadn't fully thought about all of the things that were in the contract that we needed to have in place when the pandemic arose. And so to be able to now have had that experience, you go in with a different frame of mind. And so, are there any things in your contract negotiation that you now include that you may not have in the past, or that you have clients look at a little differently? Just knowing that there are some changes that may have to happen, based on the science or based on what's happening.
That's an interesting question. We were having this discussion last week, right? And a lot of folks look at attrition, cancellation, and force majeure, right?
Hmm.
Like,
That was
like
a big one. Yeah.
force majeure, like now that the pandemic has happened, like COVID has happened, you know, the way hotels and larger hotels and the smart people are looking at it, like a pandemic like this is no longer unknown.
Hmm.
Like, so it's not a new thing. And I will say, based on the old contracts that we already had in place, the thing that was most helpful in working through situations is the actual relationship and the conversations that hotels and event owners had. Because even with the old language, we were able to mitigate a vast majority of all of the crazy situations that's happened in this country.
Hmm.
And so, I do get worried a little bit that folks are looking for a lot of new language and a lot of new things. But if something else that comes along that's this unpredictable, it will be covered.
Yeah.
It will be covered through your conversations, relationships, and your willingness to share thoughts and ideas and to partner with one another. So, are there some language? Yes, there's some things that we're putting in the contract. For instance, when I talked about a September meeting or a November meeting right now, we're going to go into it with the mindset of um, flexibility, because we don't know if people are going to be nervous about traveling,
Hmm.
right? We don't, like, I may want to have a 300-person meeting in November. It sounds good and dandy, but we get to a September and October and the variant happens and all of these types of things happen. How do you deal with it? You deal with it by sitting down and having good, honest, open conversations. Can we write some different language in the contracts? Absolutely. And we're figuring out what that language is on a day-by-day basis. But again, so I just say, at the end of the day, look at the entire scope of the pandemic, the entire scope of the world, and try to sit down and have good conversations with the venues and people that you're partnering with.
Absolutely. And so, if anyone has questions, now is your time to be able to put them in the chat. I do see that we've asked about one, people's fear, hesitation when it comes to in person and hybrid, and if there's some things that they have questions about. And so, I see Shrim is asking or is mentioning that they're trying to figure out tips for managing hybrid events with some folks in person, some online, and any tips on how to structure their agenda or sessions. And as a part of that question, I'm going to ask you, Brian, because I know that we've talked a little bit about this, and just there are some venues that are preparing for hybrid as well. So they know that there's still not the 100% security and going back to in person. And so many people are considering the hybrid option to have a small group in person, but being able to broadcast it to a larger virtual audience. And so I know we talked earlier, but if you want to share just some of the things that have been put in place by hotels, and some things that maybe can help Shrim with her consideration of hybrid and
Uh,
having some folks virtual.
Hi, Shrem. Thank you for the question. Here's my thoughts on hybrid meetings: is plan for everyone to show up. because as soon as the world opens, if you're doing something in September, October, November, think about everyone wanting to get out of their house and show up, right? And you want to sell the event and you want to promote the event as if everyone's coming, because that's really where we want to be as a society, right? We want people interacting and getting back together and doing all of those things. And then the second thing that I would say is increase your budget. Look for partners and stuff like that, because if you are able to do it, hybrid meetings are more expensive. You have to be prepared to do a live performance in front of the people that are there and have good technology. So I would say really understand what the technology uses will be needed for you to perform in a general session, breakouts, and also what type of experience you want to give the people that are home. The people that are home will not get the same experience as the people that are there in person, no matter how hard you try. Because so that's my thing is, plan for an awesome experience, because we want folks to get back and be excited about meeting and be safe and all of those types of things. And then just frankly, you have to think about your budget from a hybrid perspective and what type of technology that it will need. So you need to look at your programming, and you need to be really reasonable about what you want to project back to the people who are home watching your presentations.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think one of the things, I had a number of clients that were considering hybrid before the pandemic and just weren't really sure about what the cost would be, how to, like you said, make sure that the people that are virtual are having that, not the same experience, because we know that that's not possible, but having an optimal experience. And so being able to plan and budget so that you are allowing people to have the best experience in both spaces is really important. And I know.
And the one thing I just want to say, Aisha, before I forget,
Mhm.
when you think about the hybrid meetings, you have to think about script writing. You have to think about having multiple scripts available, because the people at home I mean, you're going to have a technology team working, to make sure that you have no down with the technology as well. We're not thinking about Facebook Live and those types of things, right? We're talking about mixers. We're talking about a team of people that are projecting what you want on stage, cutting in and out perfectly.
Right,
And if
because
and if
you don't want to shortchange the experience for people without having the best sound and lighting. Yeah, got it. Agreed. Okay, I see some other things here in the chat. Does this apply to churches? And so I don't know. Do you have experience working with churches, Brian, when it comes to some of the hybrid and in person and transition back?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, because one group that I work with, American Association of Christian Counselors, they have meetings all over the country, and they're actually partnered with some of the larger churches, because some of the larger churches already have the technology there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Many churches are already projecting,
Streaming and
streaming
yeah.
home, and their churches on. So I think if you're dealing with a church that is already pretty advanced, so it just depends on the type of meeting that you're talking about having. But again, if they're already streaming their services home and they have that technology in place already, I think that's a good partnership.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I saw Shrim, you saying you want to flesh out the sponsorship strategy. And what I will share is from some of the clients that I've been working with and other colleagues have also mentioned that one of the features that's very attractive for hybrid is the fact that you can reach a larger audience. And so you're able to, um, in some cases, double, triple the amount of people that you can see and or that can see you, because sponsors really are a lot of times looking for those eyeballs. And so in person, you're kind of limited to how many people are in the space. And so with that hybrid model, you can expand a bit. And that oftentimes allow sponsors to see more of a return on their investment, and they're willing to give up more money. So
Yeah, I found this past year the people who were doing online meetings and who really did a really good job holding their conferences over the year, they probably have increased their number of participants throughout the course of the year, which is going to then give them an even larger database of engagement when they return to their large meeting and to their in-person meetings. And so if you're thinking about hybrid, again, part of it might be just, again, the platform and strategy that you've already taken throughout the course of this past year. And if you have that type of experience, if you canceled your meetings in 20 or 21, and you're talking about going back to your meeting for the first time, not having a track record of doing some other some other online meetings and conferences over the past year, and it's just going to be a one-off, then you really have to think about the strategy that you're going to put in place prior to. So to your point, Aisha, I would say if you have a meeting for January or January or December this year, I would think about testing some smaller events even prior to, so that you can begin to have your constituents or your people in your market kind of knowing about what your technology capabilities are. And it will also help to practice the shows and also find a good partner. If this is your first meeting coming up and you're going to do a hybrid meeting for the first time, find organizations and companies that have been doing meetings over the past year, because they'll just make your life much more pleasant throughout that process, because again, it's not easy and it's a lot of work involved.
absolutely. So I told you that 20 minutes goes by extremely fast. And so I want
We're
to
only at
really,
7 minutes though.
we're at, oh, wait, where are we? You know what? I'm looking at the wrong thing here. So we're at 4:28 and we end at 4:30. So we've got 2 minutes left. But I want to thank you, Brian, not just for today and our 20-minute training chat, but for infinite wisdom when it comes to negotiating, working with different venues, finding places that fit the audience and the event that's taking place, because you have been extremely helpful. And even in this transition, being able to provide the resource of meeting shields and other resources and tools for us to think about. And so, and your virtual backgrounds, I have virtual backgrounds. I was going to go to virtual background war with you, but I think I am going to, I'm going to allow you to
call me. Let's get together. Let's meet. Let's find people. Where are the people at? Let's get together.
So the last thing I'm going to share, and especially for those who weren't able to attend and are watching the replay, I want to make sure that you know how to connect with us. And so if you have some specific questions, Shrim, you can feel free to go onto our website. So this is a wonderful inside tip for the people that are here today. Our website just launched today, Brian. We've been working on it for a minute, trying to get all the details together. And so anyone that goes onto our website, which is AIB Marketing and Consulting.com, then you will be able to get our free consultation. So you got questions, you got information that you need. We'll be able to share information with you and help you with your events, because we are essentially here to help. And I stopped sharing my screen, but I'm going to bring it back so that I can show that slide one more time, because it also has Brian's contact information, because we want to make sure that you reach out to him as well. If you're having an event, if you need help with site selection, contract negotiation, being able to find the right venue, then you can contact Brian at ConferenceDirect. This is his website that you can go to and reach out to him, because he's a good guy. So make sure you connect with us.
Should I show my kids again? No.
You should. That one is actually my favorite. That one wins every time.
Well, The point is, these are my young kids. They are a little older now, but I love this picture.
I love it too. I
Thank
love
you
it.
for the opportunity, Aisha. I really appreciate it, and getting to meet with some of your friends and family and colleagues and clients around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You will receive the recording as well as some bullets to be able to help you. And like Brian said, make sure you reach out. You don't have to do this alone. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.